And a good Thursday, everybody. This is SEC Football and Beyond for this Thursday, July 22nd. Chris Landry joining you here. Always great to be with you. Always inviting you to join us every Tuesday, every Thursday at 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern Time as we tape this show that will drop on excuse me. Let me repeat that. It's every Monday and every Thursday. All these new changes. I'm sleep deprived here with everything going on. Mondays and Thursdays, we do the show live, 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern, and it'll drop on Tuesday mornings and Friday mornings for you. A note, we have been breaking down each two teams a day. We call them our two-a-days. And we, because of travel, guys, and the media day, we taped the show on earlier this week where we broke down Ole Miss and Missouri. So I may talk a little bit about, time permitting, Ole Miss and Missouri. You want to see the full breakdown of Ole Miss and Missouri, you're watching this. You can catch the podcast tomorrow morning. So make sure that you sign up to Landry Football Podcast Channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So you want to check that out. We're going to have that breakdown. So I did it already, and there's no sense in really doing it again, but certainly I'll discuss it for you live. But you can get the breakdowns on Ole Miss, Missouri. Monday, we're going to get to LSU in Kentucky. And we'll continue through the process. I wanted to come on live, though, to discuss, obviously, the news that has regarding Texas and Oklahoma expansion. I'm going to get into a lot of the details, a lot of the thoughts, a big announcement out of the NFL today about how they're going to handle COVID issues, which is really going to be, I just hate talking about the COVID stuff. And to be honest with you, I don't really like it. The people that have listened, I'm not a political guy, and I'm certainly no guy that has a handle on the medical part of it. I really don't care to hear anybody's opinion on it, other than people who are qualified. The only thing I like to talk about is how it's going to affect the football season, which is, an issue. It's if you're going to miss games, why we're going to miss games, and so we're going to take a look at that. But a reminder again, check out that Landry Football Podcast channel, LandryFootball.com. If you're watching us now, you want to make sure that if you're not doing it on Twitch, you want to do that. You want to get signed up for that, because we're going to be heading towards that only going forward. Twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. So we want to get into the SEC situation with Oklahoma, with Texas, and kind of where that is, where that could be headed, kind of how it all played out. For those of you that listened to the Landry Football Podcast yesterday live at the same time, you're a little bit head up on what's happened, why it's happened. And we're certainly going to address your questions a little bit later in the chat room, so feel free to join us. The Oklahoma, Texas interest level, let's just take it on a couple of levels. Oklahoma has had an interest for a long time in getting into the SEC. They have long expressed that, had desire to get into the league at different points in times. There's some complexities in the past that contributed to it. The SEC was really not interested unless they could get Texas as well. But different things change over time, and different circumstances change. A few years ago, Texas and Oklahoma were looking closely at the Pac-12 and how that might be a fit for them. At the time, and I explained this on yesterday's Landry Football Podcast, the administration at Texas at that point, the president, the board of regents, were more interested in the aligning themselves more academically oriented with the Cal Berkeleys, the Stanford types, and they were more thinking in that direction, that it didn't go far enough because the Big 12 saved them by doing a deal to keep them in the Big 12. We know how things change and evolve. What has changed and evolved in Texas? Because here's what I can tell you. Texas and Oklahoma do want to get into the SEC. And the SEC is interested in bringing them in. Now, it's not just as simple. You've got to go through the legalities and timing, and we're going to get into some of those details. But there's mutual interest. No, A&M does not want Texas there. Probably Missouri would vote no at this point, maybe Arkansas. But let me just tell you how this stuff works behind the scenes. They'll be in meetings, and by the way, the SEC presidents had a meeting called today, and the Big 12 presidents had their own meetings called today. Wonder what the topic was there. We know kind of how this plays out. Behind the scenes, everyone will express their feelings, their opinions, the viability of how is this going to work. But when it comes down to the vote, they're going to be a unified front. I mean, they're not going to be, it's like anything else. When you go behind the scenes, you get all the frustrations, you get all your points, and you try to build a consensus, and then when you have the vote, you have the votes, then at that point you just sit there and you go ahead and you have a unified front, because it only creates further contention down the road. And the feeling is, once you have lost your fight, then at least be unified and be welcoming, because you may need help from someone else on a vote on something down the road. So what does this really mean? I can't tell you that, oh, it's 100% going to happen, and then if it does, will it? What time frame is it? I think the earliest time frame will be 2023, the latest 2025. The issues are complex, but what I have learned is that while I was under the impression that there might be a run at Texas and Oklahoma, or Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC of interest, I was not aware that this was imminent. It wasn't on my radar as something that was going to happen, within the last month or two. I would have talked about it on this show if I had known something that, hey, you know what, I'm hearing this or that. Hadn't heard anything. Now, these are things that have been in the works for a while. Because this story broke out on a Wednesday, it doesn't mean it's just starting. No, the train left the tracks, the station, a long time ago. And this is further down the road than probably most people knew. So, a couple of things. Where does things stand? People will say things like, well, wait a minute, well, Texas is, they're arrogant, they're uppity, they want their own way. And I've had people hit me up on Twitter, well, what's changed? Look, when they were in the Big 12, they did run it. They have run it politically. Why? Because they can. They had the power. They used it. Well, welcome to the real world. That's what happens. Well, they're not, SEC shouldn't bow down. They're not going to bow down to it. This is going to be something that's going to be more ironclad. Now, ironclad, and why does the SEC want them? That's the other thing. I mean, SEC doesn't need them. What are they? They don't need them. Folks, you have to get out of the mindset of what's important is how the football team looks at this point. That has no relevance of anything. It's about brand value, market value, and there is no bigger brand value available in the expansion transfer market, let's call it, than Texas, Oklahoma, and Notre Dame. BYU, Central Florida, and, Boise, and those are not, you're not seeing teams leave the Big Ten. So Maryland leave the ACC. Nobody's leaving the SEC. I mean, we haven't had departure from the SEC since the Georgia Tech Tulane days, although, and that was a different world then. world of football and beyond. Texas is looking at it from this standpoint. They have a deal with ESPN, and ESPN is a big factor in this. ESPN is pushing this. Why? Let me explain it. Texas has a deal with ESPN for the Longhorn Network, which runs through 2032. It pays them, best I can gather, and I've had a little bit of discrepancy on it, but it's reportedly around $30 million a year, maybe a little bit less. The ESPN's getting killed on it. It's the one thing they did, it's just not making money. They're hemorrhaging money on it. So they'd love to take, hey, look, let's get you and roll you over within the SEC network footprint along with Oklahoma, and we're going to be a lot better off as a television company. And oh, by the way, the money you make from that you get from us, plus the Big 12 money part that you get for the other part of the television contract, is pittance compared to what you're going to get as part of the SEC. So while Texas still has money coming from the Longhorn Network, they know that when that's over, and I know it's a few years away, that ain't coming back, and where are they going to be then? The viability of the Big 12 in the market. Here's the other thing to know. You remember when we talked about, for those of you that have been longtime listeners to this, we broke it as it was happening. Literally, we were doing it live one day of the new deal that was breaking out about the CBS contract when it ends, ESPN taking that over with the SEC. A lot more money. There's the framework of that being in place. It's been in place. It's not there yet, but that's going to bring about a whole lot of money. So keep in mind, in all the COVID chaos, ESPN was putting together a package to get the SEC. What you may not know behind the scenes is the Big 12 went to their television partners and said, we'd like to extend our deal or begin discussions because the Big 12 television deals end in 2025. Now, I know I feel that's a few years away, but you usually start these discussions a few years ahead. The television partner said, you know, we're good. We're just going to stay with what we got for now. Okay, so the message has been sent overtly that, look, it's not a secret that the Big 12 doesn't command the big money payday. And if you're Texas long-range future, financially, in the TV market, the growing market, of course they want to be there. Oklahoma, same thing. Why does the SEC want? That's the big question. What is it? They don't need it. Again, folks, don't be short-sighted. First of all, I think the potential of both of those football programs are good and could only increase by being in the SEC. Whether they're relevant, whether Texas is relevant in the SEC on the playing field or changes coaches every 3 years for the next 20 years is immaterial in this discussion. The brand is huge. SEC's looking at it from this standpoint. There is not so much a race, but maybe a slow race, a slow progression towards, with a limited number of teams available that are quality to add to your roster of teams in your conference. There's only Texas, there's only Oklahoma, there's only Notre Dame. You're not going to get, a certain program. I mean, who do you want to get out of the ACC? Okay, people may say, well, Clemson, maybe Florida State would want to come. Okay, we're going to have that discussion at another point. But there's not a whole lot. The quiet underlying theme among conferences has been the first 1 to 16 wins, because the first 1 to 16, they're not adding just, it's not like, no disrespect, it's not like what the Big 12 saying, oh man, West Virginia, come on over. No disrespect to West Virginia. The brand, it's good, it's nice. It's not what we're talking about here. So this basically closes the door on any conference having any chance of making any inroads on the SEC. Because the only thing that would happen at that point is if Notre Dame decides it wants to get in the league at some point, Notre Dame and maybe someone else goes, it still puts the SEC at a at a level that's almost unreachable in terms of power, in terms of money. And people ask me, well, why would they're already big enough. Why does any company want to buy out competitors? You think they sit there and that's how American business works? We made a lot of money. We don't want to make any more. No, you want to buy out, you want to buy out the other ones. You want to get stronger. You want to get bigger. That's just, that's the way of the world. And in this way of conference world, there's no question that this creates more of a revenue stream. It has been explained in detail by Disney, ESPN, which basically runs the media side of college football. They own all the presence, and they are going to be able to shell out the money. We're going to 12-team playoffs, so the whole issue of, well, it's going to be tougher to make the playoffs is not. No. You get 12 teams. You're good enough. You might have 6 of them from the SEC make it, for all we know, if you're good enough. So it's the reason why both sides the SEC is interested. Why? Because it makes them stronger. It makes them as stronger because they have 16. The other thing is, what if Texas and Oklahoma go to the ACC instead? Well, it makes the ACC stronger. Does it make the ACC stronger than the SEC? It certainly makes them closer strength-wise to the SEC than they are today. That's the whole point. That's what the SEC is telling me there on their part is what they would like. The contracts, as I look at some notes that I made from conversations, for the Big 12 and in 2025. So now, does this mean that, and this is going to be complicated because all of this has come out. It's kind of like getting a divorce, but we're going to live together for a while before we figure out the details. It's going to get iffy, isn't it? I mean, if this really comes out, then, and what I mean by that is if it really gets down the ball rolling towards that path, I mean, it's probably going to be as soon as you can make it work. Now, how can you make it work? Well, contracts are made to be restructured, ripped up, redone. We'll see how that plays out. I don't have the answer to that. I'm not. The legal part of that is a little bit beyond my purview there. Again, the Longhorn Network deal, ESPN could be kind of rolled into what they have. It makes sense, makes good sense for Texas and ESPN on both of that. As I mentioned with Texas A&M, how did this really break? I think that probably was Texas A&M leaking this out. Texas A&M is not happy. They certainly, you hear this where there's this this gentleman's agreement that we're not going to do this or that. Look, it's in the end, A&M has a vote. They're a member, as does the 14. From what I'm told, there are not 4 votes right now that would block it. Now, are there certain things that, all right, look, we want it or we think we could do it, but it may not happen now. Well, if it doesn't happen now, what is that? The Big 12, you know what they're doing in the Big 12. They're trying to figure out how can we solve this so that you guys don't leave. That's what's going to happen, or at least the talks that are going to take place in that. So that is the issue. And the other thing to mention, I checked out on a few things that I want to, because you hear a lot of this stuff and people repeat this on Twitter, and I checked into the poll. Oklahoma has to bring Oklahoma State with them as part of the Oklahoma State legislature. I've been told emphatically that is not true. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not up on my Oklahoma legislative law. I'm told that is not true. And what I was told is that in the last round of talks, there's a perception that Oklahoma wouldn't go anywhere without Oklahoma State. That was as a result of David Boren, the president of Oklahoma at that time, feeling strongly about that he wanted to handle it that way. Now, I can tell you that the governor of Oklahoma is an Oklahoma State grad. Again, What does that mean? It's just a side note. Is he going to want to stick up for his school? Of course. Oklahoma State's come out with a strong, terse statement. What can they do? I mean, they can fight to try to keep it together. Look, there will be lawyers, and they will make a lot of money, and they'll sue on this and that and whatever. The last round of negotiations, like, for example, the ACC, when they did their deal when Maryland left, there's a strong, very strong punitive exit strategy if you leave that conference. The Big 12 didn't have the leverage to do that. So people say, well, why did you give bend over for Texas? Because you had to. Same reason that if they can rally and save Oklahoma and Texas now in the Big 12, what do you think that they're going to be willing to bend over backwards for Oklahoma and Texas? Of course. Because if this takes place, the Big 12 is over. It's as we know it. There is no Big 12. They are essentially a group of 5. They become a group of 6 program of conference. You've got some good teams in it. Sure, I've even told. I talked to Big 12 in that, how does this play out with you guys? And it was said it's inevitable. We've known this is coming for a while. It's from the last and we knew this. We've said this for time and time again. We drop it. We don't talk about it a bunch. But the minute Texas says we're moving, then Oklahoma is wanting to do that, because it's as much as Oklahoma would have gone years ago to the SEC if the SEC would have just taken them. But you're not going to expand by 1 year. You expand by 2, scheduling and whatnot. So you almost have to fit 2 in, right? It doesn't have to be geographically, fit, but it has to add by 2. And Texas and Oklahoma has just been considered a pair, like peanut butter and jelly. They're going to go together. So this has been in play for a while, but Texas has not been inclined to do that. Texas is in a different state. Texas has struggled. They've got money. They're not making as much money as they have. They've not had success, in their program, and they want more. They realize financially they're not going down a path that's going to be with a great future. And when you have a COVID year, I think this stuff hits you more in the jaw and knocks you into reality. So all of that's taken place now. That's what's changed from years ago when we had the last round of expansion from a Texas standpoint. And I gave you the SEC stance. This current Texas administration is more inclined to, they want the athletic side of it to be the front porch. They want that to lead the way, to help the academics, to help everything. They see the success that the SEC has, and they'll never admit this. But I'm telling you, they see how much more relevant Texas A&M is in recruiting, in stature, because of the SEC brand. And that was the reason why the SEC wanted out, right? They wanted to get out from the thumb of Texas, where Texas was ruling everything, and B, they went to the SEC, into the best conference, and we're now going to be the only school from the state of Texas in the SEC. That's what they wanted. And Texas says, you know what, that's worked out pretty good. We like some of that. That's kind of how it's played out. Look, it's easy to say, and I know people get, I don't like this fit. A lot of people talk about which schools are a fit here or there. Based on what? Based on your perception of where they've been, based upon what their motto is behind the scenes and how they think it. It's a lot different than you probably think. The guy that's heading up and to tell you how far down the road this is, Kevin Elfite, the University of Texas Regent Chair, is the guy that's put together this plan, head up the plan that has been put forth to the SEC about Texas's admittance. So this is not something they're going to be doing. It's something that's already been done. So we'll see where that takes it. I don't know. What will happen, I'm told, within, a week, 2 weeks, both Texas and Oklahoma, I want to make sure I get the wording right, they will notify the Big 12, not that they're leaving, Okay, that's not how this works. They're going to notify them that they have no intention of renewing their television rights, which again ends in 2025. That will get the ball rolling towards us. Well, the ball's already rolling, right? I mean, it's not like they need a letter to say, hey, you know, they're thinking about going to the Big 12. The media break is kind of share that information. That's why the Big 12 presidents had a meeting and the SEC presidents have. So they have they've already had conversations. Look, they understand how this works. The conversations between presidents and the conferences, this is all taking place. This doesn't get this far if the SEC doesn't say, yeah, we're interested. It just doesn't get that far. Because, think about it, it looks bad, it makes it bad. Now, here's what it does do. It gives a leverage, because I don't know what the Big 12 can do to save Texas, but the leaking of it, look, it makes the SEC look good, and because, you know, it's known that those schools want to go there. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If Oklahoma and Texas decide to stay, it's because they can't get in, but it would likely create even more of a leverage situation for them in the Big 12 if things don't work out, if there's some stumbling blocks, if it takes too long or what have you. Don't know. So those are some of the keynotes. So the notification letter that they're not going to extend the television rights is what's coming next. And that's going to start the ball rolling into, okay, well, if you're not going to negotiate, we're not going to be part of the television rights, well, then they got no television rights, the Big 12, and they got nothing to sell. And again, yeah, you say, well, it's 2025. Those negotiations start to begin now. And right now, if you're a part of where the big money's coming from, that all comes from the SEC brand, the Disney brand. That's where the big money is. And there's no doubt that the SEC network, the ACC network, that whole brand, as the likelihood is they will own the playoff rights, like they, you know, as we get to expansion. All of those things are in place. All of those things have been lined up and looked at as that's where we need to be. It's also the power play of, and I can't really tie all this in because I can't really verify that this is the case. But one thing I thought about is, as we're moving towards less and less involvement with the NCAA and creating a power conference, you know, we've heard about for a long time super conferences. Well, there won't be super conferences. There's going to be the super conference, the SEC, and there may be a Power 3 when it's all said and done. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to all shake out, because you got Pac-12 that's got 12 teams. They've got to figure out what they want to do. What is the Big 12 going to do? They're going to try to survive. I mean, I've heard things today that they're going to make a run at Arizona State, Colorado, Utah. Those programs are going to want to leave the Pac-12. People laugh at the Pac-12. The Pac-12 has more political solvency than the Big 12 at this point. I know they're struggling, but the Big 12 is the ultimate struggle if they don't have Texas and Oklahoma. You know, do you put together a package if you're the Big 12 to convince Texas and Oklahoma to stay, and you can convince Arizona State to come because they're? I mean, you know, those are the things that are going on behind the scenes to try to salvage the Big 12's lives. I mean, this is literally they're trying to fight for their lives right now in the Big 12, because if they lose these two, then they're going to be a G5 level conference. And, you know, look, all due respect, adding BYU, adding Houston, adding Central Florida, it just puts a number. So what happens is the Big 12, people say, hey, Big 10's got to add 2 teams. Who? I mean, the ACC's got to add 2. Who? Notre Dame and who? You get Notre Dame. Who else can you get together? You know, so it's going to be a race for that. That's also the big thing with the SEC. It is, we want to be first to get to the final expansion, and the big targets in expansion, the last of them, Texas, Oklahoma, and Notre Dame, if the SEC is able to get 2 of them, you know, then no one is going to be able to catch it. So let's get some of your thoughts. I know there's a whole bunch of that. Let's see. Jadan Break says, I think college football is over as we know it, going the wrong way with the NIL. No, you Texas, going to semi-pro ball, basically. Are you still doing the breakdowns today? Cross, I will talk a little bit, time permitting. I will do we have done the breakdowns already. You can listen to the breakdowns tomorrow morning. Again, sign up if you haven't done so already. Very simple, free, simple. Sign up for Landry Football's podcast channel, wherever you get your podcast, and you're going to get the breakdown of Ole Miss and Missouri. We had to do it earlier this week and tape it because of travel issues. I don't go to media days. I'm not a member of the media. Neil was out there. Dan was at a media day. So we had to do it early in the week. Well, we did that. And then when you listen to it tomorrow, you're going to hear no reference to expansion talks. Because this story didn't break when we taped it before the expansion talk. So I wanted to come on today to give a forum, because I did yesterday on the Landry Football Podcast, but I wanted to talk about the expansion stuff, what I'd heard, who I talked with, what's going on behind the scenes, communicate with you, all of that, and do that for you. But, I don't know, time permitting, I'll gloss over some of my notes of Ole Miss and Missouri. But to answer your question, you can get that. If you don't want to, you can't sign up in time, whatever, go to LandryFootball.com tomorrow morning. You can listen to it right there. So yes, we've done the breakdowns. Seems initially like a way leverage, a bigger deal from Fox, but now it seems like legit. Well, the Fox, here's the thing about Fox. And I did some work with Fox. I don't know what's going on there, but keep in mind, and I don't know people's finances. I don't, but there's a lot of talk. Fox gave up the Thursday night NFL package a year early. They said, we're losing too much money. We can't. And that's when Amazon bought the Amazon was going to get the streaming package for the Thursday night, but they're going to get it a year early now. Because Amazon said, hey, you know what? For 1 year, we'll spend $700 million. We got that in our, pocket change in our couch. We're going to, I don't, look, there's not a whole lot they can do. I mean, they're not going to, the bottom line is the deal with Fox is, and this is where the lawyers come in, the deal that Fox has with the Big 12, excuse me, that's with Texas and Oklahoma in it. So here's where the lawyers come in, and where does the money change hands and all that, because Fox said, whoa. We signed a deal with the Big 12 that includes Texas and Oklahoma. If they no longer in there, then that deal has to be mitigated down, doesn't it? And, so obviously there's a lot of legal issues. So I don't know there. Hearing rumors, Tony, little NFL talk, Browns could extend Chubb and Ward and wait on Mayfield. I think that you go and get deals done in the NFL, Tony. When you can get a deal done, you get a deal done. They want to extend all of them, and you get them in the order, and basically that's what you need to do. Grind says, bring in Texas just so A&M can fall back to their normal place. Okay. Texas Athletic Department made more money from Bama's. Just imagine if they got good in football again. Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's the issue of, well, Texas is not any good. They should, and I know, I get the jokes. It's the fandom world, right? I mean, someone said, well, why didn't they just Texas, join the, look, the Texas brand, Texas, the brand is big when everybody makes fun of them not being good. Nobody calls in and says, you know what, I got a joke about Texas El Paso. Man, let me tell you how bad they are in football. There's no brand, nobody cares. You're big when people are just obsessed with talking about you, how bad you are. Texas hasn't done it, horns down and all that. I mean, they're relevant. They're relevant. They're in fans' minds. They're in the media's mind when they talk about it. They are, like Notre Dame in a lot of respects, they're hated. They're hated, and look at that. They're not any good. They're this and that. They're relevant. They're relevant because they're not winning, and people are saying, "Look at that! They're still not winning. Look at those goofs, and look at it." That's the brand is huge. You have to remove your fandom. You have to get behind the curtain and understand there's certain brands that matter. And look, Texas, Oklahoma, if they would have wanted to come into the league, Texas that is, Oklahoma has, as I mentioned, they'd already been in the SEC probably, long time ago. But Texas, had leverage. They were not in the situation they're in now. They had a little bit more leverage back then. They could do what they wanted to do. They flirted with the Pac-12. They got the best deal with the Big 12. They got their own Longhorn network, which was going to be it, right? We're Texas. We get our own network. Only Notre Dame has NBC. All of you, and that's an example. I mean, what has Texas on the field done to earn their network? Nothing. It doesn't have anything to do with it. Notre Dame on NBC is not because, Notre Dame on NBC still drew ratings when they were not very good. They still draw good ratings when they're not very good. They draw better when they're good, but they're still really good. Why? They're Notre Dame. A lot of eyeballs. Texas, same way. So they're a brand. They have value. Oklahoma is considered, they're the prime program in the Big 12, right? But Texas is the bigger brand of the two. They're both big brands, and they're both brands that would match up with the elites of the SEC, and they love that. So anyway, it meant Texas athletic department. Yeah, Texas, I made the whole, I broke down the money, the top athletic money revenue athletic departments. Georgia, Texas, Michigan, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Penn State, all made more money than Alabama just by comparison. A lot of money. As a Mizzou fan, I follow them closely. Gabe DeMont of Power Mizzou believes Missouri would vote yes to allow Texas and OU in the conference. Yeah, no, look, there's a lot of talk both ways on that. Let me just tell you, in my opinion, when the official vote comes out, if it goes this far, it's going to be 14-0. They're going to make a unified front. Behind the scenes, Missouri and even A&M is going to end up voting for it. Because once you've got enough votes in and you're the one that's not, you just asking for, there's nothing you can do at that point. It's kind of like the folks that say you're going to vote for president. Well, you got two candidates and you got other people on the ballot. You're just wasting your vote. Vote for the candidate. It's just kind of, it's a little somewhat analogous to that. The Missouri faction's a little bit, they come from we had enough of Texas too. But look, in the end, everybody in the SEC, not named Texas A&M, is going to want this. It's going to be more money for them. It's going to create more outreach to the SEC network, to more of a TV audience, to more advertisers, more money. Upper middle of the road team building Texas A&M. Okay. But the advantage is that A&M is the only school against it at this point. Yeah, I think that there is some talk behind the scenes, Adam. Missouri and Arkansas would not would prefer this not to happen. But again, they're all going to vote on it in a positive manner if it gets that far. Disappointed the Ole Miss preview isn't live, considering Ole Miss fans are probably some of the biggest supporters of this program. Was looking forward to it all day. Ben, there's nothing we can do about it. I'll talk about Ole Miss. Listen to the podcast. We did it for you. It's very simple. We can't do the impossible. I will break down Ole Miss for you. Time permitting, I'll do that. But I can't make Neil be here. He's traveling. Neil covers the program. I give a breakdown. I'll promise you, I will break down Ole Miss for you right here before we go. I'll stay on to do it as long as you want. I will absolutely do that. But we already did it, and we did it because that's when we had to do it, and it wasn't anything I can do about it. So sorry about that, but we'll do the Ole Miss preview for you a little bit. Don't want A&M to permanently take Auburn's spot in the SEC. Good program to the whole net. By the way, people have asked me how it would play out. The early thought is Alabama and Auburn would switch from the west to the east. Missouri would go from the east to the west, and obviously Oklahoma and Texas would be in the west. So it would mean a Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee, Vandy, East, Arkansas, LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M. So yeah, Sue's like, Oklahoma State's interesting. There's no question about it. Would Fox change their mind and ante up, keep OU and Texas in the fold, and would Big Ten get off the dime for this dynamic duo? No, I don't think. Look, it's not about that. If Oklahoma and Texas, if the SEC wants them, that's where they want to be. It's the premier conference with the most success, with the most financial success. So why would they go anywhere else? It's also, you got to remember, the Fox deal is not going to do it, because you got to remember there's the ESPN has got Texas locked into the Longhorn Network to 2032. What are they going to do? They're not going to let them out of that, even though they're not making money. I mean, the point is they're not going to hand it over to Fox. That's going to be very, very difficult. Yeah, Oklahoma State put out a statement, Grind, saying they're disappointed. I talked about it earlier. Yeah, a lot of people disappointed. Oklahoma State's in the bad spot. Everybody, not Texas, no, everybody in the Big 12 is in a bad spot. Don't add any more power football programs. Add power basketball programs. Adding Kansas would throw Missouri a bone. No, Grind, it's not about basketball. None of this is about basketball. Basketball falls in line with football. This is football drives the debate there. Adam is a Missouri fan. Good to have you here, Adam, by the way. Could say the majority of the fan base wish we're in the Big Ten. Well, they wanted, that was a talk for a while, and it never amounted to anything. Anybody here, cricket sounding feedback? Okay. Ben is complaining about everything today. SEC's king and have established themselves as a dominant conference. Go to my grave saying Notre Dame should be in the Big Ten and not the ACC. Well, that's the Big Ten issue back in the day when Michigan voted against Notre Dame getting into the Big Ten way back. I mean, we're talking like in the 1930s and in the early days of the Big Ten. Anyway, that's the big issue there. Notre Dame never forgets that, and so I don't know. I don't think that relationship is going to work. Look, everybody gets into this. I think this would make sense, and I'm guilty of it too. This is not the NFL lining up the NFL East and the AFC West. This is all about what can you do here. This is going to get out of hand. 16 teams in one conference is too much. Others will form a super conference, then lead the NCAA. Yeah, probably so. It's probably where they're going. So there's no question. We'll see. We'll see how this plays out. So it's going to be very interesting. I don't know how the interesting thing is going to be too when we get to scheduling and how we deal with that with 16 teams. Good luck with all that. There's a lot to go through. There's no question about it. Anyway, I don't know. Ben is getting smart today. Maybe I won't do the Ole Miss preview. I'll maybe make you listen to it tomorrow. So to the Missouri fans, we are the SEC over it. Never be in the Big Ten. Yeah, I mean, so if you're a Missouri fan, you like to be in the Big Ten, except you're leaving a lot of money on the table. I can tell you this: the Missouri administration doesn't really care. I mean, about losing the Big Ten. They are just doing cartwheels being in the SEC. The Big Ten's television contract was the biggest. They made the most money. I don't know, because of the CBS deal being so undervalued, it put the SEC television rights down quite a bit. That's going to go up. So when you're looking at the landscape of where things are headed and the streaming and all that stuff, the SEC's got the upper hand in that. Other than the SEC, which conference does this benefit? No, it doesn't benefit anybody. It hurts everybody. It hurts. Look, it hurts the Big Ten because it puts them further away. They're going to feel like they have to make a move. It hurts the Pac-12. Good Lord, it hurts the Pac-12. I mean, any thoughts of getting Texas and Oklahoma, they're gone. And again, the other thing too is, when the Pac-12 has gotten worse and worse financially, the Pac-12 network's been a disaster. How they've marketed it, Larry Scott's gone, and so they're in a kind of a restructure mode. They were in a position, if you look at the whole process of where they were at that time, it was a viable option. Now, going to the Pac-12 is not even a viable option, which is a lesson. Things change so rapidly. I mean, haven't we seen it? Haven't we seen it with the NLI and everything? It's a whole lot different in the last 2 or 3 weeks. It changes ahead. I don't know what to say. All right, Ben saying, yeah, the feedback question wasn't. No, I'm just kidding. I went to the hallway check in my AC. I don't know. I'm not a technical guy. Seriously, if there is a feedback, let us know. I'll have Dan and the guys check into it. I have no idea. My voice is enough of a feedback. So here's what I'm going to do. Another note I want to mention that I think is relevant. And then for Ben and for the others, I'll go over some Ole Miss and Missouri notes that I have off Film Breaking. But again, more of a breakdown. You can check that tomorrow. We really appreciate you guys joining us live. We also, we should also check out the podcast too. The NFL made an interesting announcement today, basically saying, if you're not vaccinated and you're responsible and you test positive, because you're going to be, the issue as it relates, and again, I don't care to hear, I know Neil's big on this, I know other people, but I get it. Everybody has opinion. I don't want to stamp on anybody's opinion either way. My interest, selfishly, maybe this doesn't reflect good on me, is I only have an interest as how it's going to affect whether we have football or cancellations or what have you. NFL, college. The NFL saying, you don't get vaccinated, you obviously are subject to more testing protocols. Getting vaccinated has nothing to do, I know, I hear the same thing, whether you get it or not, it may reduce the chances of getting sicker and all that stuff. The issue is if you have the vaccine, you're not under the same testing protocols. If you don't get the vaccine, you're going to be under the strict testing protocols, which is only going to enhance your chances of testing positive. And then with the contract tracing to your teammates, they're not going to be the rescheduling, just like the SEC said, just like the ACC said. The SEC, the NFL, you're going to forfeit the game, which is, you know how we go down to the last game of the regular season, in all the games, it's a tiebreaker. Go ahead and miss the playoffs because you don't want to get vaccinated. You got a right to do it, but this is what they're saying. And get this, you lose your paycheck. You're not getting paid. You don't get vaccinated. Now you talk about storm arming, and that's strong arm. That's for anybody's opinion to take it the way they want, but that's what they're saying today. All right, look, in the time we have remaining, I want to do what we can for Ben, and we'll get to maybe some Missouri talk. I know we had a Missouri fan on there, so I want to get some thoughts on on Ole Miss. And again, you can get basically a lot of the same thing tomorrow. My thoughts on Ole Miss are on this. When I study them on tape, and I take a lot of notes and I kind of organize them, usually put them on the note cards of things that when I looked at film in the spring, the film grade notes from last year, how things played out. Here's what jumps out at me with Ole Miss. Their play calling and their offensive design is exceptional. I think Lane does a good job. Jeff Lebby does a good job. What they live off of and what they do really well to make their offense go is their offensive tempo. They give defenses a whole lot of problems by limiting the ability to make adjustments. I think even when they have limited personnel in some cases, they're able to maximize their playmakers because I think even some of their offensive line play, which when I broke it down, was substandard in a lot of cases, but it didn't, they were able to camouflage it. They were able to camouflage it because of the pace, because of the tempo. You couldn't get lined up. You couldn't make adjustments. Do a really good job. I think this staff has really good in-game instincts. They know where to attack a defense. They do a really good job of it. The biggest reason why they have a positive effect against Alabama is Lane knows the premise of how Alabama likes to run their defense and how they like to make their checks when and where. And so he's going to try to pace them to where it limits their ability to do that. While the know-how is outstanding, I think they must play better on the offensive line to protect leads. Because I thought they wore themselves out as much as opposing teams last year. And if you look at them, you look at their inability to, let's remind folks that, we're sitting here talking about this, and I know there's a lot of hope, a lot of expectation. As I said earlier, you go to media day and everybody's looking at it and everybody is, whoa, man, everybody's in a great year. Everybody's going to have a phenomenal year. But we kind of know how things played out. Some games that they lost that they probably took themselves out of because their pace, they could not play in a different style. The defense has been really poor. Everybody knows that. Why? Here's what jumps out at me on tape. They lack the size and the depth to play up front. The defensive tackle position and the two young guys they're bringing in, they've got to have better defensive line play. If they can't, then it breaks the whole structure of their defense because DJ Durkin's defense is designed on getting spread out, having fast flow, and the thing that Ole Miss could not do last year is they did not play well at the line of scrimmage. The old defense, prior to DJ coming in, was the linebackers had to fill the A and the B gaps. If the defensive tackles can't do that, they were we can talk about worst defense here or there and look at it. Ole Miss was the worst at defending the A and B gap runs. They were the worst in the SEC last year at defending A and B gap runs. So they've got to better play a defensive tackle so they can set the edge in the run game and the linebackers can flow and make plays because I think they've got some guys that can rush the passer. We'll talk about them. A couple of guys in my film grades on their personnel. You can power them. You can wear them down. They're light on the edges, and that's got to change. They have to transition from a fun offensive team to what I would call a really good team. And that's going to require stouter play at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Their offensive touchdown rate was second in the SEC and eighth in the FBS, and yards per passing attempt were fourth nationally. Okay, the second most explosive pass rate in the nation and tops in the SEC. What is that? Pass plays of 30 yards or more. That's really good. That's setting it up big time. They averaged 21 second half points per game last year. That was the highest in the nation. Now, let's put that in context. they had to score a lot in the second half to win. Alabama, by contrast, had 19 points average in the second half. But they were protecting leads. The goal, ideally, is, hear me right, the goal for Ole Miss to take that next step is that they average, hear me now, less points in the fourth quarter. You want to average less points in the fourth quarter. Is Landry drunk? No, I don't drink. I don't do drugs. When you have a lead, you can run the football more and you can bleed the clock a little bit more. So I think those things are really important. And I think for them going to that next step, that's what we need to see. They had to win in a lot of shootouts. The defense gave up, I checked this out, went back and studied. They gave up an average of 6.7 yards per play. They graded out the worst against the run with their base look. It just can't happen, and that's why you look at it and you talk, oh, good year and expectation, Matt Corral and Landis, all that's true. Let's you've got to get stops. Being great on defense, shutting people out, you got to stop the run to some degree, and you got to get off the field on third down in the red zone. So, I think on the overall personnel, you've heard me discuss blue grades, red grades. I think Matt Corral's a red grade player. I think Matt Corral is an outstanding college quarterback. I think he has excellent prospects for the next level. However, the thing that he's got to improve upon, he doesn't throw into tight windows as well as you need to as a prospect. Lane is outstanding at getting people spread out to where there's huge throwing lanes. Blake Sims, Jalen Hurts, all of those guys he's had, big windows. So he doesn't have to throw in a tight window. So as it is reflected into playing in college, not so much. You get up against a tight look, team that can play good zone, shorten the windows. Arkansas last year, you got to get some tighter windows. Wasn't quite as good. That's an area he's got to improve upon as a pro prospect and maybe finishing things out. But, you got to be able to run the football and play better defense in the second half to be able to get that done. I thought that Corral's a red. I think Ely is a red grade player. I think Drummond is a red grade player. I think Ely's a red grade player as a returner and a back. I think Sam Williams a red grade player. And then you've got a number of purple quality starters. I think Pearson is a player to watch. I think Mingo's a player that's coming on. I think there's some good players. Are there enough of them? No. Am I encouraged by some of the signings on defense? Yes. But they need to see more. Said Ely's excellent all-purpose, very effective runner. Can he become the bigger playmaker in the passing game? That's what I'd like to see. I'd want to see a role for Plumlee. I think it's important. I think he's too good of a playmaker. You got to make defenses account for both. It's only going to make everybody better. As I mentioned, they were the best in SEC explosive pass plays last year without Elijah Moore. I think Sanders is really key. I think he's got big playability. He's got to stay healthy. We know that's the issue with him. They're going to play with more physical slots, and I was looking at it, and I was talking with Jeff about this. They see they're playing more bigger slot looks, and I think that can be real effective for them this year. I think the impact of Tywone Malone is going to be huge. It's going to be huge at what they can do defensively. And again, I think Sam Williams is a blossoming, big-time prospect. He can be a very, very impactful player on defense. But if you don't play well around him and you can't set the edge, then he can't really go out and be aggressive and do what he needs to do. Will the offensive tempo help them out or continue to cause them problems? I think Chase Campbell, I think Henry, I think the linebacker play is going to be pretty good. So you look at Ole Miss. Look, I hate, everybody wants to play the let's pick the wins game. I hate it because it's not going to be accurate, because how I see it now is not how it's going to play out during the year. But I'll repeat what we said again. Next podcast, you're going to listen. So Louisville, Austin Peay, Tulane, you got to win those games. Louisville's solid team. Tulane, It's got 2 defensive linemen that are going to play pro ball. It's an underrated team. 3-0 Ole Miss, got to start, should start. Then got to bye. Don't even like their chances to get Alabama. Look, you got to beat Arkansas. You know, you got to do that. I mean, if you're going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Neil thinks they're going to win 9 games, for example. You got to beat Arkansas. Tennessee, you should beat. Tennessee folks think that's a game they can win. I just don't see that. I don't see you beating LSU, but again, I think LSU can lose any game, but LSU's better. They're more talented, more ways to beat you. I think they win. Auburn's a swing game. Look, Auburn's got as much talent. They're different. They're in a transition. You know, Ole Miss has got an advantage there. That to me is a toss. Swing game could go either way. You should beat Liberty. It's going to be fun. Talked about. You should beat Liberty. I don't like your chances of beating A&M, and I expect you to beat Vanderbilt. So, look, to me, you know, I've got you 7-3. Well, wait a minute, 7. Yeah, I got 7 wins that I feel good about as a roster right now, and 3 losses. Okay, so Auburn, Mississippi State is your variable in my mind to 7-5 to 9-3. So you split it, 8-4, and again, we get into week 5, week 6. I don't know how this is going to, you know, how I look at a team matching up in this game in early November. It can't do it right now. So that's a look at. So anyway, hope you you see it. I do want to mention something here. Let me talk a little bit about Mizzou quickly, and we'll go a little bit longer here because I wanted to get that in, and Ben was adamant that he wanted to hear the Ole Miss stuff. I think, in fairness, I want to get the Missouri stuff as well. In the look at Missouri, you know, the one thing that is impressing me about what they're doing in recruiting is I did some research that if you look at in the past, and I'll look at my notes that I had, the prior staff at Missouri only signed 2 of the 22 Missouri blue chippers, which is 9%. In Eli Drinkwitz's first full cycle, he signed 5 of the top 11 Missouri prospects. That's pretty good. That's 25%. That's what they have to do. East St. Louis, big area, a lot of prospects. They've got to do that well. They're not going to go in and beat Florida, in Georgia, in Florida, you know, or beat Alabama. They're not going to go and get a whole bunch of those guys. They can maybe skill position wise get some guys that in some of those states that here or there 4 stars, but they've got to get the guys in state and say, look, stay home, play in the best conference, and you can stay home and do it. With that said, as good of a class as they had, and this is the thing about recruiting, don't talk about how you rank nationally. Talk about how you rank in your own conference. So Missouri may have a top 15, 18, 20 national recruiting class. 10th in the SEC. That's the best class they've had since 2015, the most recent one. But it's 10th in the SEC. Keep that in mind. Just like I said when in the Mississippi State breakdown. Really good class. Best recruiting class Mike Leach ever had. It's 11th in the SEC. That class gets you the number 1 ranked class in the Big Ten West. It puts you like 5th or 6th in the West in the SEC. Big difference. I thought that the Missouri staff adjusted very well to their personnel, very smart in their approach. They played with a ton of energy. They took a whole lot of chances defensively, but they were limited with their personnel. They've got a good, experienced quarterback, but got to see more. I think his success was more against weaker competition, but I think he's got some of the goods. You know, they're going to probably have to win in a shootout style like Ole Miss. Defensively, they were very poor at forcing turnovers. They were the worst in the SEC. The defense allowed too many explosive plays, the second worst in the SEC and 118th nationally. They allowed 6.1 yards a play. You know, their losses were big. But when they lost, I mean, they got hammered. I mean, they got beat by an average of 24 points in losses to Alabama, understandable. But Tennessee hammered them. Florida, okay, understandable. Georgia, understandable. Mississippi State, they got hammered. The offense is very, very innovative. Just doesn't have the firepower yet. The offensive line's not good enough yet. Love the center. I do think that that's a strong area for them that that I think can improve. I do think Maietti's really good, but he's the one guy. I do think the guard there, Case Cook, is really good. But that's kind of where I'm on their offensive line. That's got to work a little bit better. I thought their mistakes last year killed them. I thought they had some big time mistakes and some. You can't beat yourself and win in the SEC if you're at Missouri. You're going to have to play clean. You're going to have to win all the little things. Bazelak, I thought, was solid. The running back's going to be by committee. They're going to miss Roundtree. They've got more possession type guys at receiver. They need more speed guys like Dove and Chisholm to step up. Again, like the center, got more experience on the offensive line. I'm looking for that to be improved. How much, I don't know. They've got pretty good pass rush depth. I do like Jeff Goat. I like him a lot. I said that wrong. I like Jeff Goat. They don't have enough depth there. They need more on the opposite side of him. But I do think there's some talent there. Blaze Aldridge, I think, is a good fit to play Nick Bolton's position. He's not Nick Bolton, but he can set the defense very well. They're going to back off of the man-to-man stuff that was so prevalent last year with under Ryan. They're going to be more zone-based with Steve Wilkes. Look, they're a heavy motion offense, ball control style, a little bit different than how, say, Ole Miss does it. Defensively, they're going to be a one-gap, four-man nickel team. Going to play the ball a little bit better, try to force some turnovers. You look at Missouri, I kind of look at them and think Central Michigan, Southeast Missouri, Tennessee, North Texas, Vanderbilt, and I think South Carolina. That's 6 wins. I think Kentucky's a loss. I think A&M's a loss. I think Georgia's a loss. And I think Florida's a loss. So that's 6-4. So your swing games, and I would say that Kentucky's a swing. That's winnable, but I think that's, I would favor Kentucky in Lexington, but I think that's winnable for them. Boston College is where people might not know. Boston College is, if I were to rank them roster and team, Boston College is a little bit better, and that game is in Chestnut Hill. Winnable, but you know, I would favor BC. They've had success against Arkansas, but that's a swing game. So look, I mean, I think you could see 8, and certainly if they would have beat Kentucky, Boston College, Arkansas, and when all the others that we talked about could be 9. But that's kind of how I see it. I think I see more of 7, maybe 8 for them. I do want to mention, I really didn't, I was going to wait. I wasn't going to talk about it, but I do want to send my thoughts out. Lost a good friend today, Greg Knapp, who you may have heard about in the news. He's quarterback coach of the Jets, and he's been around a long time. He's coach of the Falcons, coach of the league a long time. He was in a bicycle accident. I'll car him. He's in serious condition all week, and he passed today. And so, thoughts and prayers. Great guy. Wish all of you could, type of guy that all of you would have liked to just talk with, and good teacher, meant a lot to a lot of people. So, thoughts there. So anyway, I appreciate all of your comments, all of your questions. Hopefully we got that in for Ben and everybody that wanted to get the breakdowns. As I said, though, we've got the breakdown scheduled for tomorrow. I do understand you wanted to, if you lied, that you maybe didn't want to listen tomorrow, but please do. The only way to make us grow is you can help us grow as a podcast. So want to remind you to search for, like, and subscribe to the Landry Football Podcast channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, so you can listen to us here on SEC Football and beyond. We appreciate that. Also want to thank the folks at Blue Skies. They believe in being fast, fresh, and friendly. You want to help us? Patronize great folks like that. The thoughtful layout, cleanliness of their stores. They provide customers with fast and easy buying experiences from service to products. They bring in some of the newest products on the market to the stores. to provide an even better customer experience. A smile can stay it all, and Blue Skies wants to show their customers they care about them and their shopping experience. They will always strive to improve their efforts to accomplish exactly that. So check out Blue Sky today at any of the 48 store locations across the Southeast. Look, we appreciate you joining us. A little bit of a schedule mix-up. That all happen from time to time, and people are traveling and whatnot. So we've got the Ole Miss and Missouri breakdowns in for you. A little more detail on the podcast if you want to listen to tomorrow. But I think we've given you the best of both worlds, given you a look at both of those teams. We've talked a lot about the conference expansion news. Going to have more information over at LandryFootball.com. So check that out. So basically in this lineup, if you sign up for Landry Football's podcast channel, and that's why I encourage you to do it several times, you're going to get this show. You're going to get Scout's Eye on Football, where we're going to break down football kind of on a different level, X's and O and a scouting level, but make it hopefully fun for you. And again, we'll involve you in those conversations. And then the Landry Football Podcast. So live, if you listening, you want to make sure that you subscribe to twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. And then you can get on Monday at 5 p.m. Central, you can get SEC Football and Beyond. Tuesday, you can get Scout's Eye on Football at 5 p.m. Central. On Wednesday, you get at 5 p.m. Central Landry Football Podcast. And on Thursday at 5 p.m. Central, the SEC Football and Beyond. They'll drop as a podcast on the ensuing morning, but it's the way to catch us live and participate on what we're doing. So we do appreciate that. We'll keep you up to date on everything. We'll have wanted to make sure that I came with you live with all the expansion talk. We wanted to get that. That is the thing that people want to talk about. So look, it's going to be what it is. I can tell you that I spent a good bit of time yesterday and today on the phone trying to search out some of that information. Knowing a lot of administrators, at Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, SEC office and whatnot. Ordinarily, I wouldn't really do that. I focus on the football part and whatever's going to happen there. But I know you're interested in that. So, and I know you're going to read about stuff and all that, and that's great. But, I want to go ahead and do my best to get you some insights kind of behind the curtain, as I like to say. So I wanted to come on live, even though we've already got the podcast in the can. I wanted to come in live to address you folks and have a forum for you guys. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Really appreciate everybody joining you. All of you, Tony and God, too many. Trip Card, Ben, all of you guys. I just so many of you. Adam joining us, a Missouri fan there. Where have you been? Join us. We'll be talking about everything. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll keep you up to date on everything. Check us out at LandryFootball.com. Look, we've switched over. You can click on It's Football Season and click on, we've got some really good rates for you. It's like having your own scouting department for less than a magazine subscription. You can try it out for a month. The best deal we have is on a year basis. So check out LandryFootball.com and click on the It's Football Season icon on the right side. Hey, appreciate you. Love you all. Have a great rest of your week and weekend. Lots going to go on between now and Monday, I'm sure. We'll be here to talk about it on another edition of SEC Football and Beyond. So long, everybody.